Okay guys, we're going to talk about controls now. So right here I have our two popular controls on display. What do we call this little bad boy down here at the bottom left?
A timer?
The zip timer.
Zip timer.
Because it makes a little zip sound when you turn it. So that's your basic and up till a few years ago the most popular style of control. It is the most common that you're going to see in a property management setup. So when you have that dial, that means that we are relying on the pool heater to set our temperatures. We're relying on the pool heater control board to be programmed for this specific remote. And then all that this dial does is switch modes on the pool heater from spa to pool. So that's all it does on the pool heater. It doesn't turn it off, it doesn't turn it on, it switches between modes. So in the off position, what mode are you in? Pool mode. Yep. And so if the pool's not hot, the heater will still run when the dial's on off. So it'll be in pool mode. So you can adjust at the heater what the set temperatures are for each mode. And then all that a guest has to do who's staying in the house is turn that dial. And what else does the dial activate?
The actuators. Wait.
Yep.
Actuators and blower.
Actuators and blower. If they have a blower for the spa, which pretty much everybody does, it also activates the actuators. So I wanted to first talk about a really common service call that we're going to get this year, which is pool heater's not working in a vacation rental. And the most common complaint from a guest is that when they went to turn on spa mode, either the spa didn't get hot or it stayed in pool mode, right? So when you come out and you look at the pool heater, everything's running great on the pool heater. I don't see any issue here, probably something going on with the guest. And then leave, you haven't addressed likely the issue. So I want you to always think about whether you have a zip timer or a separate type of control, that when you show up on the job, how does this guest or homeowner turn on the equipment? What do they touch? What's their experience to know that it's working or not working, right? So that if the guest activates the heater with this dial, then that's how you should test. When you show up, turn the dial. Do I have my actuators turned? Both of them, so we're in spa mode. Do I have the blower running, so it looks like the spa's running? Do I have the heater coming on, now with a new set point, 102 instead of 86, a new set point in temperature? All three of these things happening, then okay, this is actually working in spa mode. Maybe their complaint is that the pool's not 86 degrees and it's 45 degrees outside, and that's not realistic yet, right? But in spa mode, even if the pool hasn't heated up, that's a much smaller body of water, you should be able to get hot for your guests. And so that's very commonly, spas is the main thing that somebody is trying to use on the heater. So always test your spa mode. Got that?
Yeah.
All right. So if this dial is working but one of your actuators don't turn in spa mode, if it's the supply to the jet, which is called the return on pool equipment, then your spa will drain. It'll suck from the bottom of the spa and the water goes down because the jets are still feeding into the pool, but it's pulling from the bottom of the spa. If it's the drain actuator that pulls from the bottom that hasn't turned, but the jets are turning, then it'll pull from the pool, feed into the spa, and just constantly overflow your waterfall. And in that situation, the guests turn the dial. Blower comes on, yes, my spa's running. Heater comes on, heater's running great. But, 4 hours later, the spa's not hot because we're trying to heat our entire pool. We have all the pool water circulating to the spa. So you could have an actuator issue, you could have a control issue, or you could have a heater issue. All three things have to be tested when we get called out to our call. Let's talk about the difference in control here. Who could tell me the important difference between these two controls, the zip timer and the panel you see here?
Number of wires.
Number of wires, it's not an important difference. Nope.
One is like you're forcing it on, the other one's based on schedules and actually setting.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so they actually have a digital display either here, it could be hooked to an app. You usually see some sort of a link wireless device if it's hooked to an app. Or it could be a display panel inside the house, or a control on the back porch with a digital display. And yeah, you set your temperature. What's another key important difference?
I think temperature sensor.
Exactly. It doesn't use the pool heater's temperature sensor. So the control has its own sensor in the pipe somewhere. And that sensor is what this panel uses here to bring on the pool heater. So that it doesn't matter what you have the set points. On most heaters, it doesn't matter what you have the set points. If it's in the external controller mode for 2-wire.
It'll say like remote or something like that, and it's essentially slated to do that instead of...
Yep, it could say remote, and it's basically on-off. That's all the heater does. It comes on when this thing senses the temperature.
While we're on the topic, I think it's important to note that sometimes the display can be blank if it's being remotely controlled by another,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the pool heater. So I've seen people like quote the display board,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's controlled by one of like the Pen Air controllers or Aqualink or something.
Yeah, and actually, while we're talking about that, Hayward has an error code that's the same for when it's in remote mode or when you have a failed board. So that's all it's saying. Yeah. So you can't, the BO code. It could be a fuse on the bottom board, or it could be that you are just programmed for remote operation, bypassing the pool heater controls. Something external is turning it on and off. Okay? Alright, so the key difference is we have a smart control system that has its own temperature sensor versus just an on-off switch. And then you rely on the controls of your heater, it's just an on-off switch. The dial is it's open when it's in an off position, closed when you turn the dial and the timer is counting down. And so that's called a dry contact. And what that means is that the contact doesn't have its own source of electricity. When it closes, the wires you hook up to it are what allow electricity to pass through it. So basically your pool heater generates the signal to go through that circuit, and if it closes, it gets that signal back. And it knows, okay, this path is closed, I can activate pool mode or spa mode, whatever it is. That's a dry contact, whereas, and so when you look through an install manual and they're like, make sure it's a dry contact, just think of an open-close switch. Cool, I'm gonna show you a couple examples of common heaters that common heaters that have external controllers. So you'll go into the install manual, and that's where you'll find this, how to set up an external controller. And before I go further on here, if you have been quoted to replace a control board, because we have a failed control board allowing a heater to run, you need to reprogram that board. From the factory, it's going to come set to just run with the heater without any external controls. But most homes have an external controller, some external controller. And how do you know if your heater has an external controller? What's your clue?
Wiring.
Wiring, yep. That's exactly right. So right here under notice, The wire size connecting the controller must be 16 gauge, 2 conductor or larger, low voltage wire. Use direct connections to a dry contact. So if you have your high voltage coming in, and then you have your grounding bonding wire, and then your control wire. You see your control wire feeding into the heater? You know, I need to program this board for that controls. So then I have to find out what type of controls is it. Most install manuals will actually tell you the difference between the controllers. So right here, somebody read from A, the 2-wire.
2-wire controller with an internal thermostat. The user can set and adjust the temperature at the controller screen.
Great, perfect description. It has its own thermostat, and they can set their temperature from the controller, right? 3-wire with the off position, I've never seen active on a pool heater. So this basically would be some sort of option where you could go pool, spa, or off on a switch. And I've never actually seen one active. So the 3-wire that is most common, or that you'll either see a 2-wire or a 3-wire option, is without the off position. The user can adjust the temperature at the heat pump, so that's on the display of the heater. The user can select pool or spa mode, but they must turn off the heat pump from the display panel or the breaker. Most managers use the breaker to just turn off the heater. And then when they turn it back on, the temperatures are set. So you set your, what do you want my spa, what do you want my heater, for the 3-wire. How many wires are used in the 3-wire hookup?
3?
2.
Oh, trick question.
Yeah, because when they first began, it was the off, was how they were, and it used to look like, you'll see in really old pools, you'll see like this light switch looking thing that's like spa, off, pool. Never actually seen it hooked up controlling a heater, but you'll see the old thing there. So their options were 3-wire or 2-wire, and they've kept the wordage. But right here, the 3-wire is actually a 2-wire that hooks up to FS2. And this is your AquaCal heaters. So this is a very common heater, probably the most common heater that you guys are going to service, is your AquaCal. And if you have a 3-wire control, which is the dial, it's going to hook up to FS2. Now, this can change between models. Sometimes they will actually use a different connection, but you're going to find that in the install manual. So, always look that up. Let's start with the 2-wire. We're going to remove power. We're going to access the panel. We're going to connect the wires to Y and Z. And doesn't matter which one connects to which, because on the other side it's just open or close. Okay? And then we have to, number 7, very important, program it for the using the JAO interface. And this even tells you that's on page 19. So we come down here to page 19, it tells you how to go into the screen, unlock it. Passcode default 17, factory default for AquaCal. 17, just try to keep that somewhere in your memory. Also understand that if you get locked out of an AquaCal, the install manual will let you in. It's amazing what manuals can do. So that's a 2-wire controller. And again, the 2-wire controller means it has its own separate remote setup. So when it's in the 2-wire control and it has its own temperature, all this is going to do is turn your heater on and off. So you can leave your heater in spa mode, you can leave it in pool mode, doesn't really matter. Don't leave your heater off. Most heaters you have to be in pool or spa, hook up the X and the Z, or I'm sorry, yeah, the X and the Z. And then that external controller, when it closes that path, it just turns the heater on, opens the path, the heater's off. And let's say you walk up to a house and you have a heater that's not operating. You turn the controls you tell it to come on, and the heater doesn't come on. And we need to find out whether we have an issue with our controls or our heater. What can we do? in the two-wire situation?
I had one and the heater was set to off, so I had to go into the menu and turn it on.
On the display of the heater,
No, in the interface.
in the interface, okay, great.
Jumper out line,
Yeah,
just an alligator clamp.
yep, so you can at a minimum test your heater, right? You get an alligator clamp, and you jumper out Y and Z for the two-wire control, and your heater should come on and run, right? And then you can test everything on the heater and find out that it's fine, and you can let your property manager know you have an issue with the control, not actually the heater. Okay? But I don't want us being lazy about this. You know, a lot of the control issues are the really crappy wires that pool companies use. And it's not difficult to open the control panel and see where that wire is connected and trace it back to the heater to see if you have damaged wire and replace it with a thermostat wire if needed, and we can quote and make money in that process, right? So if you open up the control panel and you engage the controls to run the heater, and then at the control panel, it's not opening or closing, like it's not changing its position. You can own that out with the meter because it's dry contact, there's not gonna be voltage on it. You can own that out with the meter and see, okay, my control panel's not actually responding here. So when you encounter a control panel, like Jessica said, you do want to find out how are the customers interacting with this. Do I need to go in here and just make sure it's on? Go through the menu, find a heater, turn it on, temperature up. Okay, we just have a customer that doesn't understand their own control. A lot of times we won't understand that control either, right? There's so many different types. But just recognize it's basically a thermostat that controls more than just a heater, so you have to get in there and find the heater, right? So we can do this as techs, nothing to be afraid of. When you are in this mode, you have an option outside typically right here on your panel to bring your system on and test things. You'll often find that you show up to service something that has fancy controls and your pump's not running. And so you can push service mode. If you read the panel or the label on the front of this, it'll talk you through it. Push service mode, and then you push filter, and that brings on your pump. Filter button brings on your pump, circulates water. Now you have water flow through your heater, so your heater will stop pulling the water flow error code, and it can operate. Sometimes they'll have a heater button. I've noticed that the heater button's not always connected to the heater. So you have to go into the controls and turn the heater on. Maybe the heater's connected to one of the auxiliaries, and that's how they have it programmed.
Typically on one like that, if you hit the filter and it brings on the pump, it just doesn't bring it on at the water speed that the heater requires. So sometimes the manual button just...
That's true. If you have a variable pump, you will turn it on and you can go flip the screen on the pump and increase the RPMs, just to make sure you have enough water flow for your heater. Yeah, that's good. So you can actually, right here, step out of auto mode, go into service mode, and turn on your stuff. One of the auxiliaries or the heater should control your heater, right? Now, if it is the heater, and you have a solar panel up on the roof, then one of the auxiliaries or the heater button is going to control the solar panel, and then the other one will control the heater, which makes it all the more important that you go find out how the customer is normally, put it back in auto mode, go find out how is the customer normally activating this heater. Let me use your controllers. Is it on your phone? Okay, we need to pull that up, and I'll need you to, I'll send you text when I need it change modes, whatever. You know, I need that actually turned on. And so everything gets turned on from the customer. Heater's not running. You go to the heater, you jump it out, and it runs. Okay, we have something not set up properly in your control system. The heater's responding as it should. You're trying to use the controller as you should, but the communication is not making it back to the heater. So whoever you had install this, or whatever pool company you have service, needs to come out and either replace or diagnose the control system from there. So that's where you guys need to stop. You need to at least try to turn it on the way they do, check our control wire, jumper out the heater, and make sure the board is programmed for the remote. You can't, if you jump it out and it doesn't respond, always check. Every time you have to pull up the install manual, go through, find out, make sure that we're actually in this mode right here. Let's go down to that. 3-wire without the off position, FS to FS2. It's just 2 wires. We talked about that, but I wanted to show you that the install manual tells you as well. And if it's getting a call, it'll be in spa. If it's not closed, it'll be in pool zone. And then we come down to our programming. Okay, so every time you replace a control board, we program it for whatever setup it's there. We can't just see that the heater runs. We have to program it for how it's supposed to fit to the house. Every time we go out to a heater and it's not responding to the controls, we double check that it's programmed. It didn't resort back to factory settings. It's still programmed for remote. And install manual will walk you through that process. There's a lot there. I have in this picture the AquaCal board right here and the terminal hookups on it. You notice that they're kind of hard to get to. It's going to be really tight in there, and it's also pretty difficult to see that the wires are firmly connected. Yeah. And the common wires that they use there they're pretty small, and it's easy for them to crack, both at this connection and at the control panel connection. So you can't, don't want to miss the fact that maybe the controls are sending, the heater's not responding, do we have a problem with our board, or I jumper it out and it works? It's a control problem. Always check those connections. Take your thermostat screwdriver, loosen it, pull it out, stick it in, and if you need a mirror in there, whatever you need to make sure that you're getting it actually in between the 2 metal pieces and you have a good connection. But you also, with these wires in particular, can easily break them by over tightening those terminals. You screw them in and they just crack. And then the wire makes contact for a little bit until things vibrate and then slides off. Okay? So that's why I have this little tiny mini picture up there so you can see that's a very common control issue. And as techs, that would be our responsibility to find, not the control company. That was a painful callback for me. I'm going to talk about another common control connection. So this is the Hayward gas heater. And they have a connection point where the high voltage comes in. The high voltage comes in on these terminals, and right below we have our pool common spa. And then you will program the board for whether it's a 2-wire control system or a 3-wire. And then they'll tell you what to use for the 2-wire and the 3-wire right here in the control system. What you looking at, Elliot?
No, so the top one is a 2-wire, that's the one that's just a little zip timer.
The top one is high voltage.
No, I meant on the, down there, you've got 2 sets of, see there's the thing that says 2-wire remote that you can't actually read, and then the one underneath this 3-wire remote. On this picture, there's 2 things.
Oh, okay, yeah, they have some labels there to make it easier for you. Yeah, so on the 2-wire, you're not going to be using the spa terminal. You're going between common and pool.
And that's the one that's just the on-off zip.
And they have it outlined here in the 2-wire, and then you're connecting to orange or /pool, white /24 volts for the 2-wire. Now, this one it says, the remote thermostat will operate the heater. The heater thermostat will function to limit the water temperature to a maximum of 104. And so, and it will show BO, right? BO means we're in remote control setup. Now, there are a few heaters that you can go in and set a max temperature. Somebody's been messing with the background controls and they set a max temperature. So the customer is trying to heat their spa to 102 and the max temperature is at 95. So you want to keep that in mind. And the spa just never gets hot. You're gonna have to turn that spa on, you're gonna be sitting there watching it, and 30 minutes later, it'll probably be up at 102 if everything's okay. And if everything's not okay, it'll stop somewhere. At some point, it just turns off for no reason. You go look, and okay, I don't see any error codes. Let's go back into the manual and find out where my lock is, my limits, my locks. Manuals are amazing.
Are you able to adjust that?
What's that?
Are you able to adjust that?
You are able to adjust that lock. Now, if you're, this is another common gas heater, and it has what's called a fireman's jumper, and it's connected to our fuse. So right here's our fuse, and then down here it's this little yellow jumper, and then comes back up here and connects to 24 volts. So it's basically a potential safety or pool heater control. So in this situation, you set your pool heater, you turn everything on at the display, and you set it for its max temperature, say 104. And then the 2-wire control system that has its own thermostat hooks into where these 2 yellows are. So if it closes, the display comes on for the heater and it runs. If it's not closed, it'll either pull, depending how smart the heater is, an error code that we have a fuse open, because it's connected right here with the fuse, or there'll just be no display on the board. And so you could be chasing a no display, chasing power problems way too long, and then at some point you realize, oh, right here next to the fuse, my control wires are hooked up. This has an external controller that needs to be turned on for me to see any display. As soon as it turns on, the heater doesn't have a remote or regular mode, it's just on off for this heater. So as soon as it turns on, you need to also check, what's my temperature set at? If my temperature is set at 95, when they turn their controller on, this heater's gonna turn off at 95. And so this will also be in the install description, there'll be a warning about that. And so you go in there, just turn this fireman hookup up to max temperature, and then the external controller with its own thermostat just bring the heater on and off as needed.
So are you connecting that before the fuse?
You're pulling this jumper off right here. I can't remember if it's before or after. It's very close to it. So this little jumper right here, and then you're putting 2 spades, or you can cut it here and tie in some wire nuts to the control wire. That's how you'll see it done. And this goes for installing, new heaters. Sometimes our installers will put in a new heater and not set up the controls properly, and so we'll be going back to those calls as service guys, understanding how it works, pulling up the manual. This is also important because there's a whole collection of property managers that don't have their heater on the proper remote setup, but they have their own little Wi-Fi controller, and all they do is turn the heater on and off like this. So they could link it to a fuse wire, they could link it to the flow switch, the water pressure switch, they could link it to a high temperature limit switch. So anything that turns off the heater, they could link that to their wireless control system. And so you'll sometimes see that, you're like, why is this wired into this random wire? Well, that external Wi-Fi control system that someone has just breaks the connection to a safety, the heater's not gonna run. So you're pulling an error code that we have a safety issue, but you use your eyes, find out how the controller is set up. Is the controller tied into that? Then we don't actually have this error code likely. It could be just the controller. How do you figure that out? Bypass that controller. Watch the heater run. You bypass that controller and it's still pulling that safety code, then we actually have an issue with that sensor or the heater. Well, guys, there's a lot here. The moral of the story is the install manual has a lot of amazing information. We have amazing wire diagrams in our pool heater install manuals. And then one of my favorite things on a pool heater install manual is the disassembly visuals that they have for every different thing that, on there. And so if you come down to the bottom of your pool heater, you also have your part descriptions for any one of your parts that you have. Exact parts can help a lot when Buddy is ordering. And then look at this. You can visualize how to take apart a lot of these things, where your screw points are, what things look like on the inside. So unfamiliar heaters will often have a very robust install manual, and that can help you. I was helping Sean yesterday on a pool heater that is a lot more rare, the Jandy gas heater. And so neither of us really remembered how to access the blower wheel and all that. And I pulled it up and he was taking it apart at the same time. He found it before me, but in the install manual, just a full disassembly of each one of these parts and how to get to it when you need to get to something like a stuck blower wheel. So that's not control specific, but I just want you guys to get familiar with busting out these install manuals and going through the heater that you're struggling with. It's going to have what you need on there. Any questions?
So the one that says the 2-wire with an internal thermostat, it's talking about the thermostat in terms of the pool heater? The little zip timer thing?
The internal thermostat, they're talking about the controls thermostat, not the pool heaters. So it'll say controller with internal thermostat, it means the controller's thermostat.
Oh, okay. Because that, so the little zip timer thing, the way it was wired, it was for the 2-wire with internal thermostat.
No, the zip timer is your 3-wire setup. It only uses 2 wires, but the zip timer doesn't have a thermostat into the pool anywhere, so it relies on the pool heaters. The zip timer is going to be the 3-wire setup,
But you're only using 2 wires.
so you're only using 2 wires.
Gotcha.
Backwards.
It's just
What about that don't you get?
So
how's that confusing?
That was just open.
You have your 2-wire setup that's a 2-wire, and you have your 2-wire that's a 3-wire, so.
Yeah.
The difference is a smart controller is your 2-wire,
Okay.
and your 3-wire is a basic controller that's not smart, you're just turning it up.
And that one's just open and closed, and it's using the pool heater's logic, or the pool heater's thermostat to get.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Both the set points, and that design is not to bring your heater on and off, but to change modes.
Gotcha.
Cool mode, spot mode
Gotcha.
on that heater.
You don't want to call both 2-wire, because that'd be confusing, so it's better to use 2-wire.
And 3-wire.
So
There
the
you go.
difference- so the
That's not confusing at all. That's good.
Three-wire has 2 wires.
Thanks for watching. If you're willing, give this video a thumbs up and drop us a comment. Don't forget to hit that bell icon to stay updated with all of our future videos. And as a quick reminder, HVAC School isn't just a YouTube channel. Dive deeper with us at our main website, hvacrschool.com. Curious for more knowledge on the go? We've got you covered. Tune into the HVAC School podcast, available on all your favorite podcast apps. And while you're at it, join our thriving Facebook group. Also, don't miss out on our free mobile applications available for both iPhone and Android. We're all about community. For techs, by techs.